Harry's wife. Will she ever withdraw? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Another of the key questions that you've posed to aid your understanding of Harry's wife's behaviour was the question, will she ever withdraw from public life? The person that posed the question made reference, of course, to Amber Heard, who's been lying low and has just recently settled her dispute with Johnny Depp by paying a reduced sum, and also Prince Andrew, who also has been staying out of the public eye. It's a legitimate question. Heard and Prince Andrew are both narcissists, as established through my forensic examination of their behaviours. See the relevant videos about them. Yet they have largely stayed out of the way. Why is that? It's worth examining that before we address the question of Harry's wife withdrawing. Well, first of all, there was a huge media interest in Amber Heard when there was the trial with Johnny Depp. But then interest has moved on to other things. And also, Amber Heard hasn't kept sticking her head above the parapet. Yes, there was a statement issued after the judgment. Yes, she was seen doing the old thrift shopping, see parts passing. There's been reports of her living on a Spanish island as she seeks to keep herself away from the enforcement of judgment. But there doesn't appear to have been the PR puff pieces that Harry's wife engages in. There hasn't been any public attendances, or at least they've not been reported on extensively, which would suggest that it's unlikely that they've taken place, and that Amber Heard has largely stayed out of the public eye and withdrawn. Why has she done that? Well, quite simply, her narcissism determined that that was the most appropriate way for her to assert control over those people that are threatening her control. So, public enemy number one, Mr. Depp, the presence of him in his judgment, which remained unsatisfied, is a threat to her control. And in order to nullify that threat to control each and every time that it manifested, it was better for her to stay in her Spanish hideaway. Thus she did. It wasn't sensible of her to keep appearing in the United States at film premieres or getting acting gigs and so on and so forth. Now, of course, there are some narcissists that would do that. But her status as the type of narcissist that she is, her narcissism recognised that it needed to assert control over Depp and others, and rather than do so by hoovering them, and rather than do so by smearing them on social media and in repeated news articles, it was much better to do so by staying in a position of withdrawal. That preserved residual benefits, money, aided with regard to facade management, and of course assisted with regard to the issue of control. She, of course, would have coterie members around her and other people that she was interacting with within that fuel matrix, which would provide her with fuel. She wouldn't be starved of fuel, but in terms of the global platform, she retreated from it because her narcissism identified that that was the best thing to do. What about Prince Andrew? Well, I have mentioned this in parts passing, but it bears repeating. Similarly, a big factor for him was the residual benefit of money. And essentially, the deal was this. Keep a low profile, Randy Andy, and you'll get your fees paid, you'll get your security paid, you'll get accommodation, and you'll get a contribution to the damages that you pay towards Virginia Giuffre. Keep popping up on the parapet, making a nuisance of yourself, you can kiss goodbye to the Wonga. Such was the importance of that money, and of course how it links into the issue of control, because it enabled him to nullify the threat to control posed by Virginia Giuffre. Prince Andrew, reluctantly and with much grumbling, of course, accepted that deal. The residual benefit, the receipt of which meant that he would assert control not by going on the warpath or the rampage, but by remaining in a position of withdrawal. His narcissism enabled him to get that, and he would remain fueled by those around him, but he wouldn't be prominent. Yes, the loss of status is a threat to control, but it was one that would be addressed by accepting it in order to preserve the money, which in its particular method enabled the assertion of control. It was a trade-off. So the loss of status is a threat to control, but the retention of money and the benefits that come with that is A, a residual benefit, and B, a method of also asserting control that outweighs the threat to control posed by having to retract his horns, in effect. We know he didn't like it. We know that he apparently cried when he was being told that he wasn't going to be reinstated to public life, as Charles, of course, asserted his own form of control over his brother. But ultimately, the reason that he withdrew was because his narcissism also essentially recognised that there was a good deal to be done vis-à-vis the prime aims. So what about Harry's wife? Is she ever going to withdraw from public life? Well, the short answer is, in the immediacy, no. Why? Because her modus operandi is to basically keep popping up and saying, I've been hard done to, you must accept this. And unfortunately for her, lots of people don't. And they say, oh, change the record, you whining fucker. We're bored of listening to you going on about how difficult your life is. I've just had to eat my cat and burn my furniture in order to keep myself alive. And you're coming to me with your first world problems? Fuck you. People, of course, are tired of hearing her whinge. And when they express their dissatisfaction with that, that threatens her sense of control. And her style of narcissism, rather than withdraw and think, yeah, they had enough of me, haven't they? I'll just be quiet, is actually to try and cause those people to shut up by going, but I'm the victim here. Your dead cat and your burnt furniture isn't the issue. The issue here is that members of the royal family raised questions about my son's skin colour, and they were so nasty to me that they made me feel suicidal, and we got chased by the paparazzi. Look, we even did a reconstruction and passed it off as it actually being the paparazzi chasing us, so you must believe me. Her incessant need to assert control by telling everybody about how badly she's done to is commensurate with the significant victim mentality that she has. Her victim mentality is stronger than that of Prince Andrew and Amber Heard. They both have it too. They are narcissists after all. But Harry's wife, as a mid-range narcissist, has a particularly strong victim mentality. She doesn't withdraw because withdrawal is contrary to the residual benefit of money. She needs to produce stuff. She needs to be seen. She needs people to respond. She needs to manage that facade. She needs to turn up and make speeches. And therefore, her narcissism says, in order to get the prime aims of controlling people, drawing fuel, character traits and residual benefits, we need to be out there. We need the PR puff pieces to keep flowing. We need to turn up making beige speeches. We need to hijack other people's programs and pass them off as our own. We need to create more whinge fests with Netflix. We need to do more interviews in magazines. We need to contemplate writing our own memoirs. And thus, she's not going to withdraw. What then might make her withdraw? The repeated challenges? No. Even though more and more people are seeing through her, unfortunately, she still does have a core of support. And as long as that exists and it's public and it's vocal, no matter how much opposition she faces, her narcissism will cause her to look at that core, that rump of support, and make her think, well, you're right because these people say that you're right. And so long as those individuals have a vested interest in her and continue to support her, then she won't withdraw. However, if more of those individuals, as they are doing, start to think, actually, she's not all that she said she was, and the more cynical individuals, which includes numerous narcissists, see there's nothing to be gained in supporting her any longer, for instance, the teat that she is, monetarily to some of them, is cut off, or that actually their support of her backfires with regard to their own endeavours, they will not be as vocal in their support of her and will withdraw. She then loses that rump of support. And if that rump of support doesn't have any presence in the media, doesn't have any substantial noisy presence on social media, then her narcissism will dictate there's little to be gained by putting yourself front and centre, and then that is more likely to precipitate her withdrawal. But the point is, will she ever withdraw? Ultimately, she could do if her support is eroded and those noisy individuals that are not particularly numerous in number but do generate a lot of heat, if they start to lessen their support for her, that is what is going to precipitate her withdrawal. It's not going to happen immediately, but there is a substantial risk of it occurring for the reasons that I've explained. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.